What's happening, ladies and germs? This is the PackerMan, and welcome to the final episode of All Elite Review. Yes, I basically made the executive decision to end All Elite Review. I honestly don't have the same kind of passion for reviewing wrestling shows as I do motorsports. So I'm going to close out All Elite Review with, quite frankly, the best pay-per-view and probably the best wrestling show of the entirety of 2020. And that is AEW Full Gear, which put on a banger of a show from start to finish. I mean, it honestly kind of reminded me of last year's Full Gear. It's like, why is Full Gear always like the most anticipated of all the pay-per-views? Like, holy shit. Like, the quality of wrestling on this show was just mind-blowing, honestly. But even though this is going to be the final episode of All Elite Review, that doesn't mean that content relating to All Elite Wrestling is going to quit entirely. I'm just going to take a short little break, and then starting next year, there's going to be a new show, a more condensed show, probably episodes of around or less than 10 minutes, nothing super long, called AEW Scorecard, where basically it's going to be like a, I guess like a Sports Center version of this, where I basically, give the results of a match and how a match ended, and a new ranking system that I'm going to be introducing next year, which that's going to be revealed in the first episode of AEW Scorecard come the first Sunday of 2020, which will actually come before the first show of 2021. I probably said 2020 right there. I meant 2021. But thankfully, the first Sunday, it'll basically slide into the same Sunday slot as All Elite Review. And this is going to be a little taste of that. I'm not going to go into a full in-depth review of this show. And quite frankly, nothing I say can give this show justice. Can do this show justice, because this show was just so good from start to finish, and I think they kind of wanted to kind of forget what happened at All Out, because while that show was good, it definitely had some moments of, not so good moments, like, Matt Hardy suffering a pretty bad landing, which resulted in him getting legit knocked out, and basically AEW getting slammed for that. So they kind of wanted to kind of move away from that, I suppose, and that's kind of what they wanted to do with Full Gear, and I think they pulled it off and then some. So there were 9 matches for this show, the buy-in match, and then 8 main card matches. The original buy-in match was actually going to be Orange Cassidy against John Silver, but then that got moved up to the main card, and then into the buy-in match they slotted an NWA World Women's Championship match. So it's pretty clear that there's an alliance going on between NWA and All Elite Wrestling, kind of similar to what AEW has with AAA in Mexico. And you even had Don Callis, which is the Impact Wrestling's executive vice president, on commentary for the first match, which was the Eliminator Tournament Finals match between Kenny Omega and Adam Page. So it's pretty obvious that AEW is willing to branch out and work with, other promotions to try to help stabilize pro wrestling, because, COVID-19 has really kind of put everything on hold, so to speak, except for the big promotions like Ring of Honor, Impact Wrestling, AEW, and WWE. So, there's that. But we're going to go ahead and get right into this. The buy-in match was, as I said, for the NWA World Women's Championship between the new champion, Serena Deeb, who won it from Thunder Rosa a couple weeks ago, and she went up against a former champion, Allison Kay. Of course, they've already signed Serena Deeb to AEW, but Allison Kay, I think, is another one that they need to sign to what is pretty much an ailing women's division. And it's like I said before, they need to really focus on beefing up their women's division. I mean, giving it some more focus, really, because they've got the talent. They just need focus. You know what I mean? But this is a great back and forth match with Serena Deeb getting the win with her Tequila Sunrise finisher, which I guess she calls the Serenity Lock, and got Allison Kay to tap out. And then we had the first match of the evening, and they opened with the Eliminator Tournament Finals between Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page. This wasn't like a super long match, but I think they're saving that for a little bit further down the line, like say maybe a year or year and a half down the line, when these two will meet again for the world title, which is what I think is going to happen. But this was a great match between these two. Had a slight slip when Kenny Omega went for that Singapore roll, flipping to the moonsault. He kind of slipped a little bit. Might have tweaked his knee a little bit, but these guys still put on a banger of a match. The finish came when Omega hit Adam Page with the One-Winged Angel. Page tried to fight out of it, but Omega managed to nail it. And of course, the One-Winged Angel is probably the most protected finisher in the world right now. And he gets the 1, 2, 3 off of that. So Kenny Omega, the winner of the Eliminator Tournament Finals, and we're going to come full circle with him and Jon Moxley, because remember last year they main evented Full Gear in that absolutely crazy lights out match. That was just absolutely unbelievable. The next match was a bit of a comedy match between Orange Cassidy and John Silver. And for a match that had to follow Omega and Page, this was actually pretty damn good. But when you have two good workers in John Silver and Orange Cassidy, I mean, they just produced magic here. And it was a bit of a comedy match, to be sure. Like at one point, John Silver ripped the pockets out of Orange Cassidy's pants, which was pretty funny. But at one point, Silver actually managed to hit his finisher, which is called the Spin Doctor, which is kind of his variation, like an airplane spin throw or a tower hacker power bomb, you know, whatever you want to call it. But he only got a 2 count. But Orange Cassidy managed to hit the Orange Punch after ducking the Discus Lariat, and then hitting his Beach Break for the 3 count and the victory. So Orange Cassidy picking up another pay-per-view win. And then we had the AEW TNT Championship match between Darby Allin and the newly christened Cody Rhodes. That's right. Cody Rhodes managed to win his legal battle because he was trying to get the Rhodes name back from WWE, and WWE finally gave up the chase and basically let Cody Rhodes have the Rhodes name back. So he was officially announced as the American Nightmare Cody Rhodes before the TNT Championship match. And you could see how happy he was to have the Rhodes name back. So he is now the official owner of the trademark to the Rhodes name. And this was a pretty good match. There was one point in this match where Rhodes hit an avalanche crossroads, which is just absolutely insane. I mean, you know Darby Allin would throw that into the match for sure. But Allin also hit his coffin drop, but Rhodes kicked out at 2. And then it kind of became a cradle fest with Darby getting the better of Rhodes. And Darby Allin is your new TNT champion. And you can see that the emotion on Darby's face was legit. Because, I mean, when you talk about a guy who basically had to, I mean, at one point he was homeless. And now he is the AEW TNT champion. And of course Darby is super popular with the fans, and for him to get his first major singles title is a pretty big deal, to say the least. And then afterwards Team Taz came out and, you know, basically kicked his ass, threw him through one of them set pieces, kind of similar to what Omega and Moxley went through the previous year. But at one point Cage tried to slam Darby's arm in the door of the car that he came to the arena in, but both him and Ricky Starks were run off by Will Hobbs, who came and ran them off with a steel chair. Then the next match was the AEW Women's World Championship match between Hikaru Shida and Nyla Rose. Of course, these two faced at Double or Nothing in a no disqualification match, which ended with Hikaru Shida winning the title there. And a lot of people's feelings was that Rose was going to regain the championship here, but that was not the case. As Hikaru Shida, after a hard-fought battle with Nyla Rose, and here's the thing, despite the fact that this match really had no build-up whatsoever, I mean, at one point he was homeless, and now he is the AEW TNT champion. And I mean, for the most part, this was still a good match for what it was. And of course, these two have a history, so there's that as well. But Shida basically hit a series of just hard knee strikes to get the 3 count and the victory over Nyla Rose. So she is still your women's world champion. Then came what many felt was the match of the night and a match of the year contender. This was the long-awaited match between the Young Bucks and FTR, the tag team formerly known as the Revival, for the AEW World Tag Team Championship. Now, the feeling going into this was the build for it was somewhat questionable in a lot of people's eyes, especially for a match that had been years in the making, especially if you've been watching Being the Elite. I mean, there have been references to them for years, and then they finally come to AEW to face the Young Bucks at long last for the World Tag Team Championship. And holy shit, years and years of hype was lived up to and then some. I mean, there was nothing that I could say to do this match justice. I mean, every influence that these two teams had basically came out. I mean, you had FTR doing moves from the Steiner brothers, their Avalanche Bulldog finisher. Saw references to the Midnight Express, some of their influences, and of course they also had a throwback to DIY's finisher, Meet Them in the Middle. Of course, those two teams faced off on NXT TakeOver Toronto, I think it was, in a best 2 out of 3 falls match for the Tag Team Championship, which may be called to be one of the best tag team title matches in wrestling history. But there was a callback to that, and then you had the Young Bucks pulling out some of their influences, like the Hardy Boys' double team finisher, the Twist of Fate into the Swanton Bomb. They also did a 3D. I mean, there was a lot of references and throwbacks in this match in terms of tag team wrestling. But the focus of the match was on Matt Jackson's injured ankle, so to speak, although he actually has a legit knee injury. He actually has a slightly torn MCL and a thinning ACL, which was a direct result of the table spot. If you remember from a couple months ago, they had a match with the Butcher and the Blade, which was a street fight match on an episode of Dynamite, where Matt leapt off of the tunnel onto, I think it was the Blade, through a table, and the leg of the table actually jammed into Matt's right knee, and I think that's where the slight MCL tear came from. He's actually been working through it ever since, which, you know, credit to him for that. But they also did the ankle injury to kind of, you know, sell that as well. But the finish actually came when I think it was Dax Harwood actually went for a 450 splash. You know, they were not about the flips and stuff. They were all about the old school stuff. But Harwood decided to throw caution to the wind and try to do a 450. And Matt hit him with a barefooted super kick because they had pulled Matt's boot off and was focusing on the ankle. And Matt gets the 3 count and the victory over FTR to win the World Tag Team Championship. And of course, they had 1,000 fans in attendance, and they went absolutely bananas. Young Bucks finally winning the Tag Team Championship. And they'd also put in a stipulation where if they didn't win the tag titles, they would never challenge for them again. Some say that it maybe made the match a bit predictable, but you know, when you consider that Cody Rhodes did the same thing last year and he actually lost, was it really as predictable as a lot of people thought? Especially with all the near falls that we saw in this match. But yeah, that was a fantastic tag team title match, and it's just like, holy shit, dude. If only these guys performed in front of a full crowd. Although I have a funny feeling that this is not going to be the last meeting between these two teams. I think this is going to be a multi-pay-per-view feud between these two teams. So we have not seen the last of FTR and Young Bucks. That much I can promise you. And then we had the Elite Deletion match between Matt Hardy and Sammy Guevara. The perfect come-down match after such an epic that we saw in the tag team title match. This was wonderfully stupid. That's the best thing I can do. Of course, it was a cinematic match, but I think Guevara and Hardy kind of wanted a proper blow-off after their all-out match kind of went downhill after that, scary bump that Matt took. So they decided to do an Elite Deletion match to kind of finally, end the feud once and for all. And this match had Roman candles, a Roman candle shootout. We saw appearances from the Hurricane Helms, and Gangrel of all people. I was just like, what the fuck? Gangrel? Of course, there is some history there because when Gangrel started, he had the Brood back in the Attitude Era days of WWE. And he also took the Hardy Boys under his wing when they formed the New Brood. So there is some history there between Matt Hardy and Gangrel. And I thought that was just wonderful there. And that was just like, holy shit, that was completely unexpected. But eventually I got to the point where it came down to Guevara and Matt Hardy in the Dome of Deletion. And Matt Hardy eventually finished Guevara off with several brutal chair shots. Got the 3 count and basically put him in a trash can with Private Party, who was also there to help him out. Because Matt's basically been their manager for the past couple months. They basically dumped Guevara into a trash can, and they dumped him into the back of a truck, and he got driven away. So there's that. And then we had the semifinal match, which was MJF against Chris Jericho, where if MJF won, he would be a part of the Inner Circle. And this was basically, these two trying to do chicanery on each other. Eventually it got to the point where MJF got the diamond ring from Wardlow. Jericho got his baseball bat Floyd from Jake Hager. And MJF was like, okay, screw you then. And basically flopped down Eddie Guerrero style onto the floor, or onto the ring mat. And the referee turned around and saw that Jericho had the baseball bat and was questioning, whether or not he actually hit MJF, which allowed MJF to hit the most devastating move in all of professional wrestling, the surprise roll-up schoolboy pin for the 3 count and the victory. So MJF is now officially a part of the Inner Circle. So it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic develops. And then we had the main event, which was the AEW World Championship I Quit match, the first I Quit match in AEW history, between defending champion Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston. And even though I'm not doing a review for the Go Home show to Dynamite, these two had a absolutely blistering face-off. Like, holy shit, the emotions were just, it felt so raw and so real. And then you had this match, which was, it's an I Quit match. The only way to win was to get your opponent to say I quit. And these two were doing all manners of different things to each other. Steel chairs. Moxley brought out the barbed wire wrapped baseball bat. Eddie Kingston brought out thumbtacks and tossed Moxley onto them, to which case he grabbed a bottle of rubbing alcohol and poured it all over Moxley. Now, it might have been just water, but Moxley's selling of the whole thing. I mean, it made it seem like it was legit. So even if it wasn't actual alcohol, Moxley did a great job selling that it was actually alcohol. So even if it wasn't, it seemed like it was. But at one point, Kingston ripped a strip of barbed wire off the ball bat and was using it to basically punch Moxley with. But then the finish came when Moxley actually wrapped that same strand of barbed wire around his arm and put Kingston in the bulldog choke, to where a piece of the barbed wire was actually digging into Kingston's neck, which actually forced Kingston to finally say I quit. And the realization of it, was pretty real as far as Kingston was concerned, because now he had nobody to blame but himself for saying the words I quit. So there was that. And then at the end, even though it didn't end with an attack, we're coming full circle, because as Moxley was celebrating his World Championship win, his defense of the title, out comes Kenny Omega. And of course, we're right back to where we were 1 year ago when these two faced off, as I said, in that Lights Out match. And we're coming full circle, baby. and we might see the reappearance of the cleaner somewhere down the road. I would imagine that they're going to have that championship match at Revolution. I mean, it's a little ways down the road because it's not until February, but honestly, I would hold off on having that championship match until Revolution. I mean, that's a pay-per-view quality match if I've ever seen one. I mean, we saw it last year between these two, you know, when they went in that Lights Out match and just put on an absolute banger of a match. You know, and now you see, you know, these two are going to be facing off once again, this time for the world title. So, are we going to see the Best Bout Machine coming down the road at Revolution? Which I imagine is where these two are going to face off for the title. Only time will tell. But that was what happened at AEW Full Gear for 2020. Obviously, I didn't give my match ratings because, you know, this is the final show. But one thing I will do is give my final rating for the show. And considering that this show was just absolutely top-notch from top to bottom, I'm going to give the same rating for this year's edition that I gave last year's edition. And that is a perfect 10 out of 10. I mean, what else can I say? I mean, when you have 2 or 3 legit 5-star match contenders, I mean, that opening match with Omega and Page, the tag team title match, the absolute brutality that was Moxley and Eddie Kingston. You know, Darby Allin and Cody put on an old school classic with the TNT Championship match. I mean, the women's championships matches were good for what they were. MJF and Chris Jericho, 2 mega heels going at each other in an old school style match. Yeah, the Elite Deletion, which was wonderfully stupid. You had a comedy match and Cassidy and Silver, and they ended up putting on a banger of a match in their own right. I mean, what else can I say? I mean, honestly, the $50 felt like a steal. You know, it was a much different feeling, I thought, from what we saw from All Out. So, that's just my personal feeling on that. Well, that is going to conclude my final edition of All Elite Review. But like I said, this is not going to be the end of AEW related content on my channel. As I said, I'm starting up AEW Scoreboard in January, which is going to be more focused on the statistical side of things as opposed to, you know, the in-ring work and all that stuff. I'll leave that stuff for guys like JD from New York and the Joe Cronin Show and all that other stuff. I'm going to focus more on the statistical side of things, you know, and give, like, you know, what the match results and what happened in each match, and, you know, where they are in my new ranking system, which I'm going to unveil next year. So that's how that's going to go. But that's going to do it. For those of you who have stuck around, thank you for watching All Elite Review for all 65 episodes that I've had it. It's the end of one era, but the beginning of another starting next year as far as AEW is concerned. That's, well, from my point of view. So thank you very much for watching, and hopefully you'll continue to keep watching my other shows here on the PackerMan 71 YouTube channel. But until next time, this is the PackerMan signing out. See you later. You better like and subscribe or face the consequences. You have been warned.